What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It is finally time to start talking about Star Wars on this channel, and I've had a lot of Star Wars videos on this channel up to this point, but if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I was waiting until a little bit closer to the release of The Rise of Skywalker to actually begin the series of reviews where I'll be reviewing all of the Star Wars films, the animated series, some of the video games as well, and some of the non-canon films like the Ewok films from back in the day, and I'll be doing them all chronologically. So I'm really excited to get started with this franchise now with the first film in the chronological order, The Phantom Menace. Let's go ahead and take it back just a little bit and go to 1999. I was 1 month away from becoming 6 years old, and I remember this film vividly. I remember going to see this opening day with my family. To give you a little bit more backstory about myself and Star Wars and my family, Star Wars has always been a huge part of my life. I genuinely cannot remember a time where Star Wars was not heavily integrated into my life. Growing up, I had multiple cousins that I would see on a constant basis who were huge Star Wars fans that inspired me to learn more about the lore, get into the books, get into the comics, get into the video games, and really expand my Star Wars knowledge outside of the movies. But up to this point, you know, like I said, I was literally a month away from being 6. I had seen the original trilogy multiple times for what it was. You know, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I was just one of those kids who loved it. I loved Darth Vader. I wasn't super deep into the Star Wars fandom and the lore. I just really enjoyed the films. I enjoyed the original trilogy, which I had seen tons of times up to that point. I don't remember when my first time watching Star Wars was, and I really do wish I did, but it was always integrated into my life. So by the time the prequels came out and The Phantom Menace was coming out, I was already a big fan of the universe. I already enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the music, and I just had a good time watching these films. There was something that was so heavily integrated into my family between my parents, cousins, and just so many other people that I knew. So I was super excited to go see this film. Obviously, I didn't have the same hype and excitement as the people who had been waiting decades and all those years to actually watch this film. But what I can say right out of the gate was when I walked out of this film, I had an amazing time, and it's the first film I ever remember crying in theaters. And like I said, I was 6 years old, so me crying in the film isn't some huge deal. However, it is a scene that really still holds up to me, and the scene that is in this film that made me cry is a scene where Anakin is leaving his mom. There's just something about that, even still when I watch it today, that's just so emotionally resonant, and I really do enjoy that scene from the film. But let's break down this film a little bit more and just talk about why I love this film so much. The Phantom Menace is one of my favorite films of all time. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I am a die-hard Star Wars fan. From the books, the comics, the animated series, the films, the video games, I've always been deeply integrated into Star Wars and learning about the lore and the characters and the things outside of the films themselves. And Star Wars has just always been one of my favorite things of all time. Not my favorite films of all time only, but also my favorite thing of all time. I really don't know who I would be and where I would be in my life if I didn't have Star Wars integrated in my life. I have the Mandalorian symbol tattooed right here. I have May the Force be with you tattooed right here, and I'm planning on getting a lot more. But yeah, Star Wars has just been always heavily integrated into my life, and so The Phantom Menace came out, and I was a huge fan of the film. Growing up, I loved the film. I loved Darth Maul, the double-bladed lightsaber, all the new characters that were instilled into it, the music, the video games that came out around this film, the books that came out around this film that I started to read as I got a little bit older, and I just always had a great time with it. And I love Jar Jar Binks, and I know that that's kind of a divisive topic, right? But as a kid, I enjoyed him, and you know, George Lucas has said Jar Jar Binks was for kids. As a kid, I enjoyed him, and I've grown up being a fan of the character. He's a silly goofball, and I'll get into a little bit about him as we go on to this review. This is a film that I have just so many fond memories of, between the music, the characters, the action, the visuals, and the new worlds that we get to explore through Star Wars. I really love this film, and I always have had such a soft spot on my heart for this film, and I've always really hated, and it's always been a hard thing, really, growing up in this world where people were telling me, oh, the original trilogy is 1,000 times better, the movies you like are garbage. And you know, I always hated that because I love the original trilogy too. They're some of my favorite films of all time. All the Star Wars films are my favorite films of all time. When I'm in that universe, I am lost, I'm excited, I am happy. So I always have agreed with everybody about all the things that there are to praise about the original trilogy. But then this movie came out, and I was being told by so many people that I was wrong for the opinion that I had. And now that a lot of people like myself who are a lot older and can articulate our thoughts a lot more of why we love this film, I think that there's definitely been an increase of Star Wars fans that have been able to appreciate this film, even older Star Wars fans over time that have really been able to rewatch this film and see that there's a lot more there than they gave credit the first time they watched it. It very much is a setup and a world-building film that really just sets up everything that's to come. If you didn't have this film, there's so much that you would lose from Star Wars between the prequel trilogy, even some things that we now know about the original trilogy, but also specifically more the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars and Rebels. This film does so much and sets up so many things and introduces so many characters that would go on to become fan favorites and just incredible characters and incredible story beats, that if you remove this film, you would remove so much of what makes Star Wars so amazing in its modern age of storytelling in Star Wars, and the things that they've expanded upon, the characters that people have fallen in love with over the years in different mediums. That is because of this film. So that's one thing that I always want to praise about this film. Now, as the film goes itself, I think that one of my biggest negatives about the film would be the fact that some of the dialogue is a little bit overly political at times. It can be a little slow at times. However, I love this film and I love the dialogue. Some of it can be a little political at times, but as I've gotten older and the further I've gone into Star Wars, it's called Star Wars. You don't have a war without politics, and I think that's George Lucas had such an incredible idea, and he had such a great map in his head for what he wanted to do. And though the execution on some beats isn't perfect, and there's some things that could have been fleshed out a little bit more in this film, there's some characters that could have been expanded upon a little bit more, and this film doesn't really feel like it concludes. It really does feel like a setup film. What I love about this film is that George Lucas really set the groundwork for how the universe was at this time, how the Republic and the government and everything was at this time, and I really just love to see where the world was and seeing the little stepping stones that would lead us to having Palpatine as the Emperor later on in the other films. And I really love the entire cast. You have a beautiful cast of Liam Neeson, Natalie Portman, Jake Lloyd, and you have so many others. And I just really enjoy the fact that they were able to bring back people like Ian McDiarmid to play Sheev Palpatine. You know, he's the guy who played Palpatine in the original trilogy, and to be able to bring him back now when he was older, where he could actually play the out of makeup, just regular senator. I really just love that continuity. I love the attention to detail, and there's just so much in there politically and just the details. George Lucas jam-packed this film with so many details for the fans, for people who would go on to watch these movies over time, to have a full understanding of how this universe works politically, and also with the stuff that's going on with the characters on a more intimate level. And I just really enjoy the setup that he gives in this film and how much he really lays out as far as the lore. Being able to hear about the Jedi Council and all these Jedi that we had heard about, being able to see Master Yoda as Master Yoda and no longer the crazy little Master Yoda we saw in Dagobah, and the things that were expanded upon in this film as far as the lore, you just can't deny those things when you watch this film. On top of that, you have some of the best action that the franchise has ever had, on top of one of the greatest lightsaber battles in the entire franchise. Now, I can't objectively say what makes the lightsaber battle at the very end of this film a little bit lesser than some of the other films is there isn't really the stakes between the characters. The character of Darth Maul, the big bad that they fight at the end, is not really established too much. He doesn't have too many lines of dialogue in this film, and I think that that's going to work for some people and it's not going to work for others. At the end of the day, there's no way you can really deny how awesome that lightsaber battle is from a choreography standpoint. The way it looks, the way it plays out, the makeup done to Darth Maul. Ray Park just kicked ass playing Darth Maul on a visual standpoint. He just really made the character his own, and he's gone down to become one of the most iconic Star Wars characters of all time, and has been greatly expanded upon in the Clone Wars and Rebels. So he's a character that's just become a huge fan favorite. You know, being able to see him return in Solo, I love what they've done with this character. I really love what they did with Darth Maul, and to be able to see this film and just see kind of the bare bones version of the character, it really just goes to show how much people really attach to his character, even just from a visual standpoint in this film. And they expanded upon him so much in the Clone Wars and Rebels and books and comics that he has become one of the biggest fan favorites, even from people who don't enjoy this film. Darth Maul is an incredible character, and he's really expanded to be more than just a cool looking bad guy. And in this film, what I can say is, sure, he should have been fleshed out a little bit more. I wish he would have actually, you know, gone on to be in more of the prequel films. However, I really do enjoy Darth Maul in this film. Ray Park plays the role really well. He's just menacing. He has such a cool look to him. The action is so well done. Liam Neeson is great as Qui-gon Jinn in this film. We get to see a new kind of Jedi. You know, we had seen how Master Yoda was in the original films. We see the heroics that Luke brought to being a Jedi in the original trilogy. But then in this film, you know, when you get to learn a little bit more about politics and how the Jedi are involved in the politics and what their role is in society, and how Qui-Gon Jinn kind of sees things a little bit different. You know, they pretty much say in this film that he would be able to be on the Jedi Council as a Jedi Master if he would just follow what the Jedi Council wanted. And what I love about the character of Qui-Gon Jinn, he's really been expanded upon in the Clone Wars and books and all these other things, is he just really wanted to follow the Force. He followed the will of the Force before anybody else, before the Jedi, before the Sith, before anything. It really just came down to the Force for him. That's one thing I really loved about Qui-gon, is he's just so different as a Force user and as a Jedi, and his love and passion and respect for the Force is something that is just so beautiful, and I love how they've expanded upon that in the Clone Wars and Rebels and books and comics. He's pivotal in things like becoming a Force ghost and all these different things that are really deep into the Star Wars lore and the Force after death, and that's something that I really enjoy about his character and what they've been able to do with him, expanded upon. But let me move away from giving my opinions based on these characters and these stories and where this film kind of takes things, and let me just give my opinion on this film. It's on its own, and what I can say right out of the gate is it's incredibly well acted. People are going to give their opinions on people like Jake Lloyd, who played young Anakin Skywalker in this film, but I've always really enjoyed his character. He's a sweet young boy, and I think it's a lot of times people look at it and go, that's Darth Vader? How can somebody, like, how can that be Darth Vader? He's so sweet and young, and he's making all these little, like, cheesy lines, but he's a kid, and that's part of the tragedy of Darth Vader for me. Part of the human part of the character is that he was this really good, sweet kid who went down the wrong path and got confused and was manipulated, and that's something I really enjoy about seeing Anakin and Darth Vader in this film, is he is this sweet young boy who wants to help. He wants to be a part of something bigger. He has these dreams and aspirations, and I've always just really loved seeing Jake Lloyd in this role. It's crazy to kind of think of where he is today in life, but I really just love seeing him in this role, and I've always been a huge fan of him as Darth Vader, as Anakin. And then to just see the rest of the cast that's in this film: Ian McDiarmid, like I mentioned before, Liam Neeson, you have Ewan McGregor, who has gone on to become one of the biggest fan favorite castings of all time. We have the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series that's going to be coming to Disney Plus within the next few years, and I think that you can't have any of those amazing things without what is established in this film. Though Obi-Wan is not nearly as fleshed out as I would like him to be in this film, though we get a lot more time with him in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But what I can say about this film on an overall level is that the casting is so well done. The special effects, though some of it is a little cartoony and a little dated in today's world, really set the standard for what we're doing with a lot of films today. A lot of people criticize this film for a lot of it being done on a green screen, but so many of the action films and big budget, superhero films that we all love and go and watch these days and praise to the high heavens, learned from that film. They learned from that green screen and what they were able to do, and how immersive George Lucas was able to make the Star Wars universe with that film. And it goes to show that he was always breaking boundaries and always taking things to another direction technologically and visually, and I think that he did an incredible job of kind of setting the way for where we are in filmmaking today. And I think you can't deny that when you watch this film, despite there being some cartoony elements and some elements that aren't necessarily the best as far as the special effects. But what I can say also is Star Wars has always done a really good job of blending very grounded practical effects, which this film has quite a bit of and people do not give enough credit for, but blending the practical effects with CGI and all these other special effects that really enhance it. And sometimes there's a cartoony vibe. I think the original trilogy even had cartoony vibes as far as certain things go, but on an overall level, I really enjoy this film. Visually, I enjoy the performances, I enjoy what it does for the lore. The score in this film is fantastic. John Williams gives one of the greatest scores that he has ever put to any Star Wars film. Some of the most iconic music, and even if you don't like this movie, there's no way you can think of Star Wars and not think of a lot of the songs that are in this film. He really brought it home and stepped it up to another level where it sounds just like Star Wars, something that would fit in right with the original trilogy, but is expanded upon and really brought to a new era of Star Wars. And I just think that what he did with this film on a musical standpoint, it's fantastic. Visually, like I said, I really love this film. I love the action in this film, and I love how much this expands the lore of Star Wars. I can agree that it is more of a setup film, that it really doesn't expand upon a lot of the characters and the narrative as much, but it sets up for where the universe is going, and I think that you cannot have so many of the amazing things that we have in Star Wars today without this film. I love this film so much. It's flawed, it's not perfect, but all the Star Wars films are flawed. There's so much here that is to love as a Star Wars fan. There's so many little details and little things that have been expanded upon that when you look at it as part of the story or the first episode of a TV series, what you're really being able to appreciate about the really great episodes and stories that come later on is where it all started. And I think that the simplicity and just what it does to really set up the universe and really kind of show us what it was politically and all the different things, I really think that George Lucas just nailed it with this film. I think he did a great job. There were some things that could have been done better, sure, no doubt, but I think that the longer this film has gone on, the more fans there are, the more appreciation there is for this story and the things that are in this film. And I think that people hate on this film far too much. Now, the one last thing I will say is Jar Jar Binks. I'm sure you guys all have your opinions on Jar Jar Binks, and I've always been a fan of Jar Jar, like I said. He's just a big, fun, silly, goofy character. Now, I can objectively agree that maybe he should not have been a main character of this film, but I feel like he fits the Star Wars universe very well, and had he had a smaller role, we probably wouldn't have minded him nearly as much. Also, I'm a huge fan of Ahmed Best, who plays Jar Jar Binks. You know, being able to be a fan for all these years and being part of the Star Wars community, it was a known thing that he was very embarrassed and very saddened and very heartbroken by the fact that people reacted the way that they did to his character. You know, you get cast in a Star Wars movie, you're excited, George Lucas tells you, hey, this is who you're gonna be, this is how you're gonna act. If you've ever seen the behind the scenes for this film, he did exactly what George Lucas asked of him, you know, and he was super excited. He was a big kid on set, excited for everybody to be able to see him in Star Wars. And then people trashed him. They talked crap on him. The man was suicidal. Look it up. There's a whole video where he, you know, talks about the fact that he was going to end his life because he just felt so embarrassed and just so like the world was against him and like he had made the biggest career failure in his whole life. And I think that that alone is just despicable. I am a huge Star Wars fan, and though there may be things I don't like about it, there may be some casting choices that are not always the best, I have so much respect for the filmmaking process and people taking on roles, and I just have no respect for anybody who wants to completely shit on somebody who had the opportunity to be in a Star Wars film. Like we would all take the opportunity to be in a Star Wars film. We would all do whatever they asked us to be. I would be Stormtrooper number 7005 in the back. I would literally be Garbage Man in the corner. I would do whatever they want to be in a Star Wars film. So you get to be one of the main characters in a Star Wars film. You're gonna kind of break ground with motion capture, and you're gonna be this first, you know, kind of zany, over-the-top character in Star Wars. And then the reaction he gets is just childish. It's just ridiculous. It's one thing to not like the character, and you know, like I said, I can objectively agree that he maybe should not have been a main character, but I've grown to love the character of Jar Jar so much, both in this film, his short appearance in Attack of the Clones, even the brief second you see him in Revenge of the Sith, but also his appearances across the Clone Wars and different comics and books. He's kind of become the Goofy, I guess you could say, of Star Wars for me, and anytime he shows up, I have a good time. He's a silly, lovable character. He means well, and he really doesn't do anything for me that when I watch him I think, oh, that's a terrible character, I hate them, I don't want them to succeed, I want them to be a terrible character, I want to shit all over their life. I just don't get that mentality when it comes to the character of Jar Jar. He's just a silly, goofy character. He really does not do anything that really, I think, ruins anything for me or takes away from me. It's okay not to like him. He's a little loud at times, a little bit much. I could totally understand that viewpoint for certain people. But the people who completely shit on him as an actor and the character and just act like he was the biggest mistake in all of Star Wars, he's not. And I think that that's just the most ridiculous standpoint that you can have. And that's just, you know, my take on it. I really think I have a lot more appreciation, I think, for him as an actor, Ahmed Best, and the amount of love and passion that he put into the role that he was excited for, you know, and being able to see him come to Star Wars Celebration this last year, which he spoke about the fact that he was kind of nervous to do so, but he comes to Star Wars Celebration and he gets this huge standing ovation at every single panel and every single show that he came out to.
The one, the only, Ahmed Best!
Was so amazing. You could see the emotion on him. You know, there were multiple times where people would bring him things at autograph sessions or just being able to shout out his name or chant his name at these different events, and to see this huge room of thousands of Star Wars fans all stood up, giving this man the biggest applause they possibly could, with nothing but love and admiration for the character that they've all grown up with or grown to love. And I think it just goes to show that there are so many Star Wars fans who love him as an actor and loved what he brought to Star Wars, and also, even if they didn't love him, have enough respect for the fact that he's an actor and a person who just tried to be in Star Wars and got the opportunity and did exactly what George Lucas said. And when you see his reactions to the amount of love that he was receiving, it was overwhelming. The man definitely got emotional plenty of times, and I think it just goes to show that these are still people who are making these movies, and as much as we can be attached to these fandoms, people get way too over the top. So to be able to be in multiple rooms and multiple times where he came on stage with thousands of Star Wars fans who were there to just show love, stand up, scream, applause, whistle, and just show this man that he is a part of Star Wars. Nobody can ever take that away, and there are so many of us that love him in that role, whether it's a big and serious and just needed and grounded role or just a big, goofy, fun, silly role. Because the reality of the situation is Star Wars is just like any other universe, world, any other real life thing. You're gonna have serious people, you're gonna have goofy people, you're gonna have people of all kinds, you know what I mean? And so I think that Jar Jar fits into that universe as a fun goofball. Again, maybe he shouldn't have been a main character of this film, but on an overall level, I really enjoy him as a character in this film. So yeah, guys, guys, this is one of my longest reviews in a while. I could just ramble on about this for days and days and days, and we can definitely go back and forth in the comments and just have a discussion about this, and let's keep it respectful, right? Like, I totally understand if you don't love this film. It is what it is, you know. I think that there's so much more there, and I would definitely, you know, if you haven't seen it in a long time, watch it again. And if you haven't watched the full franchise as a whole, I highly recommend that. Watch the entirety of the franchise, chronological order, including the Clone Wars and Rebels. And I truly believe that if you do that, you will have a far more greater appreciation for this film and for what it does for the overall universe, at least more so than you did maybe the first time you saw it or the last time you saw it, however long ago that was. So yeah, guys, that's going to be my review for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Thank you guys again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Leave me your comments down below. Let me know what you think about this movie. Where does it stand for you as far as your favorite Star Wars films? And I think I should also say, though I have all these things that I praise about the film, I would say objectively it's my least favorite Star Wars film. Now, I don't say that because I hate the film. I love this film. But out of all the Star Wars films, which I love them all, yeah, this is definitely my least favorite one. I think that it just, you know, there's things that could have been done better. But on an overall level, this is the film that I love so much and expands the universe that I am completely and utterly addicted to and I will never get tired of. So yeah, guys, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Leave your comments down below and I will see all of you guys in the next video. And may the Force be with you.